Just out today are the latest statistics from SQM Research on prices and rents in the capital cities of Australia. SQM Research, always a good source of independent, accurate, credible information on all manner of things to do with residential property, including vacancy rates, what's happening with rentals, what's happening with prices in the major markets, what level of listings there are in the major markets, and a whole lot more. So I was interested to see their weekly editions of their prices index and their rents index for the 8 capital cities. One of the things that stands out in the information that they published today is that Adelaide continues to be a very solid performer. If we look firstly at rents, rents is an economic barometer which is largely ignored by mainstream media. It's obsessed with what's happening with median prices and clearance rates, and it doesn't place a great deal of significance on rentals, which we think is a mistake, because rental movements is often a precursor to what's going to happen with prices in our major markets. So Adelaide's doing very, very solid numbers in terms of rentals. The rents index for houses and units are both up in annual terms for Adelaide. And then when we turn our attention to prices, we see that the asking prices index from SQM Research for Adelaide also shows moderate rises. Now, what we know to be true from our more in-depth research that we do at Hotspotting, where we look at every quarter, we look at every town and suburb in Australia in terms of what's happening with sales activity and what's happening with prices. We know that there are individual markets in Adelaide that's doing a lot better than those individual figures that show that prices in annual terms are up 2 or 3%, which suggest moderate performance by the City of Adelaide. But those generalised figures, one number to describe an entire capital city, are always quite misleading. And what we've found, we've quite recently updated our figures for Adelaide, and we found two things. One is that Adelaide is one of the leading cities of Australia, again, in terms of sales activity. Its consistency and steadiness at a time when sales activity has dropped a lot in cities like Sydney and Melbourne. It's dropped off in Brisbane as well, but Adelaide has continued to keep on keeping on. It's still producing really, really strong sales activity figures. So that's the first thing that we know. The second thing is that behind that generalised figure, talking about how much price growth that Adelaide's had, is the reality that certain sections of the market have done a lot better, particularly the top end, end of the market in Adelaide, suburbs with median prices, $800,000, $900,000, $1 million, a little bit above $1 million, which is the top end in Adelaide terms. There's a lot of suburbs in that market precinct that have had double-digit growth in their median prices in the last 12 months. So there's sectors of the Adelaide market that's producing really strong price growth, and right across the city there's a really strong, consistently strong sales activity. There are more suburbs with rising momentum in terms of sales activity in Adelaide than any other capital city in Australia. So that's why a couple of major locations in the City of Adelaide feature in the new edition of our national top 10 best buys report. Always our most popular report. It's the one that we sell the most copies of every time we produce it, every 3 or 4 months. And the latest edition features a couple of notable locations in Adelaide, including the City of Marion local government area. I've talked about it before, and I'm sure I'm going to talk about it again because it's a real standout for me. One of the things I like about it is that it has a number of very, very major and important infrastructure facilities in its midst. There's a cluster in the City of Marion where we've got the Flinders University precinct, and right next to it, the Flinders Medical Precinct, major hospital facility right next to the university, and not far from that we have what's known as the Tonsley Precinct. Used to be a car manufacturing plant which closed down. It's been repurposed as an innovation precinct, and it's very central to the reality that Adelaide is the technology innovation capital of Australia, and that's a very important part of its economy and of its future, and it's one of the reasons why I'm excited about the future of Adelaide as a property market and believe it to be the most underrated capital city market anywhere in Australia. So the City of Marion has in its midst the Flinders University, the Flinders Medical Precinct, and the Tonsley Precinct. Also major infrastructure. The Southern Expressway comes right up through the City of Marion, heading towards the Adelaide CBD from the south. There's also the rail line from the CBD coming right down. Stops a little bit short of the University and Medical Precinct, but that's about to change because the state government is spending quite a lot of money to extend it further, so it goes all the way down to those important facilities. So in the midst of all that, there are a number of suburbs which offer good quality real estate at prices which, compared to our biggest cities, are very, very affordable, real standouts. So if we look at the property market there, there's a dozen or more suburbs clustered around all those infrastructure facilities where the cheapest of them has a median price in the 300,000s. Most are in the 400,000s, mid 400,000. Suburbs like Clovelly Park, Hallett Cove, Mitchell Park, Marion itself, Shiedale Park, Trott Park. Lots of park suburbs in this particular part of Adelaide. And then the more expensive suburbs of the Marion local government area have median house prices mostly in the 500,000s. Suburbs like Plympton and South Plympton, Warradale. And the most expensive of them is Glengarry, where the median price is 650,000. But a very high level of affordability relative to its location and what it's close to and the quality of the housing there. And that's one of the big things that Adelaide offers. It's just got fantastic value for money real estate. The rental yields are pretty good. Most suburbs have median rental yields sort of somewhere from 4.5% to 5%. Not the highest in capital city Australia, but certainly very solid and much better than you'd get anywhere in Sydney and Melbourne. This is a market that's showing solid growth. Now, I mentioned that even though the major research firms tend to tell us that Adelaide house prices are only rising sort of 1 or 2% in annual terms, that there are precincts that are doing much better than that, and the City of Marion is one of those precincts. If we look down our list in the location report that we have available on the Hotspotting website about the City of Marion, and you can also access this information in the National Top 10 Best Buys report, we have, for example, Edwardstown, which is up 8% in the last 12 months. Mitchell Park is up 7%. Trott Park is up 7%. And the market leader, Shiedale Park, where the median house price is 470,000, it's up 10% in the last 12 months. So this is very much one of those precincts of Adelaide that's doing better than the average and producing moderate to strong price growth right now. And we think it's going to do even better as we move forward. Now, probably the most outstanding thing about the property market in this precinct is that the vacancy rates are ridiculously low. There are 8 postcode areas that are spread across the City of Marion local government area, and all of them, except one, have vacancy rates well below 1%. Now, the only exception to that is the postcode, including Glengarry, and its vacancy rate is 1.5%, which is still very tight, but the rest of them, 0.5%, 0.6%, or 0.7%. And that would tend to suggest that we're going to see rents continue to rise in this market and rental yields continue to rise as well, because that's close to being the tightest rental market anywhere in capital city Australia. Adelaide generally has very low vacancies, not much more than 1% across the board, but this is probably the tightest rental market anywhere in Adelaide, and supported by the fact that it's so close to those major facilities that would tend to generate big rental demand, the University, the Medical Precinct, and the Tonsley Innovation Precinct. And there's a whole lot more there. There's a lot coming up in its future. Flinders Village, which is going to be a long-term project at the university to create new education facilities, hotels, student accommodation, etc. It's a proposal at this stage, but the total project over time will be $1.5 billion. We have the Flinders Link project I mentioned, extending the rail line further south right down to the Medical University Precinct, spending $125 million on that. This precinct benefits from the North-South Corridor project. That's a road project that's under construction, $620 million, etc., etc. The biggest shopping centre in this part of Adelaide, and one of the biggest in the entire city of Adelaide, is the Westfield Marion Shopping Centre. They're spending $230 million expanding that shopping centre. And at the Tonsley Innovation Precinct, there's got a whole lot of exciting things happening. It's worth a visit if you're ever in Adelaide. There's very interesting things being developed there in terms of technology innovation. But they're also developing residential precincts as part of that project. 850 dwellings over time to be built there. It's under construction, it's underway, and that's a $265 million project. So this for me is one of the most compelling markets anywhere in Australia if you're a property investor asking the question, where next? Where next to look to buy affordably, good value for money, good rental yields, and good prospects for capital growth, then this precinct in this city is one that I think you should consider. The City of Marion and the City of Adelaide, our most underrated capital city property market, where rents are rising, prices are rising, and in some precincts they're rising in double digits. And I think that's going to be even more so as we go into the future, because there's so much that's positive coming up for the City of Adelaide in its economy and in its property market. That's it for now. That's Hotspot of the Week for this week. Terry Ryder from hotspotting.com.au signing off. Let's do it again, same time next week, and be mindful of the different times because we now have daylight saving in the mix. Bye for now.